So welcome A2A family. As you guys know, we have been doing athlete stories. We had our first installment about a month ago. This is our second with Miss Briana DuBose. And we are going to talk about a lot of things today with Briana.
Mhm.
There's a lot that we are going to get to, mainly her book, which I am very fascinated in. But first, Briana, thank you very much for taking the time out from all the different things that you do in a day to sit and talk about your story, your athlete story, as well as writing this book.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. When you all first reached out to me about, a couple months ago, I was just really excited. I think what you all are doing is great. It's needed and it's well received. So thanks for having me.
That's great. So, like I said, before we even get to the book or anything else,
Mhm.
let's start generally. Tell the people that are watching this a little bit about you. Where are you from? What was it like growing up as an athlete? Any type of background that you can give us on you.
Sure. So when people normally ask me this question, it can get a little long-winded. So I'm going to really, really try
Well, we
to
got nothing but time,
swing.
so you can.
I'm going to try to swing this to be concise as possible. So I originally grew up in Bowie, Maryland. For those who do not know, that is Prince George's County. For those who don't know that, I am in the DMV, DC, Maryland, and Virginia, East Coast, born and raised. Um, I played basketball pretty much my entire life, but I loved other sports as well. Like my second favorite sport was soccer. I totally wish that I would have continued playing it when I got into high school, but my coach, everybody around me was like, you need to specialize. You need to specialize. If you don't, that will mess with your recruiting and your playing time and you're this and you're that.
Kind
I
of the opposite of
literally
what they tell kids now, though, right?
Right, because from a muscular skeletal level, you need to do different things because when you're constantly wearing down those same muscles, that causes injury later. So that's why, like, 2 and 3 sport athletes, it's actually a really good thing because you're working different muscle groups when you're playing different sports. But I digress. Um, but yeah, I played sports my entire life. Soccer was my second love. I did softball. Softball was way too slow for me. And then once I got hit in the face, like off of a line drive pitch, and I was like bleeding out. I was like, I'm over this. I'm over it. Even though it came easy because it was just more so like, the throwing. And with basketball, you're constantly using your hands. So like my hand-eye coordination was pretty good. Um, but what else did I do? Soccer, swimming. I did everything. I tried everything. I really loved it. If I could do it again, I probably would do more or just I guess unconventional sports. So, in the Black community, it's usually basketball, football, track and field. Those are kind of the ones that stick out the most. And I would have loved to play, like, to this day, I would always say I would have loved to play lacrosse. And we had a lacrosse team in my school, and the lacrosse field is set up like a basketball court. So, like, ironically, there's like a lot of carryover, which people don't always know. And I would have loved to like do a deeper dive into tennis, like some of those like country club sports that people don't really think about, or Black folks specifically,
Yeah.
um, because you get paid and it's less wear and tear on the body. I'm like, I can just swing a golf club or like swing a tennis racket and be good to go. Um, so I think that would have been something that would have been dope. But fast forward, like I said, middle school, played pretty much every sport. High school, it got more specialized. But my love for other sports never wavered. Like I still love other sports to this day. And when I get a chance to play them, it's always cool to, like, in a rec league or whatever, be able to, still be able to juggle a soccer ball or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, High school, it got more serious. Like I just took a deeper dive into recruiting, took a deeper dive into what did I really want to accomplish for myself. And kind of going back for a second, when I was a probably, I don't know, it was probably grade school or something like that, because my brother and I are almost 6 years apart. And And he obviously everything happened before me. So I saw him go through high school, what that was like with my parents. I saw him go through college, what that was like with my parents. And somewhere along the way, like whenever I was in middle school or whatever, I was like, yeah, I'm going to get a college scholarship because I don't want to deal with that. When your parents are on you about every little thing because they're, putting some of their money towards your education or whatever it may be, like they're just on you. I didn't want that at all. So I made that declaration pretty young. I was like, I'm going to get a scholarship somewhere to play basketball. Originally, I wanted to go to UMD because that's my state school and my mom's alma mater. But by the time I got into high school, I started realizing what big time athletics was or what my idea of it was. And it kind of scared me a little bit. And I was like, okay, in my mind, I was like, all right, the higher up I go, the crazier the coaches will be. So I need to be like mid-level. I need to land somewhere in the middle to be able to, still have a life, but then like not deal with crazy coaches. And I was like tremendously wrong because they're crazy at every level. I had friends that went D2, D3, NAIA. They're crazy. They are absolutely insane. They have so much stress on their plate trying to deliver a winning program and keep their job. And it sucks because they're putting so much pressure on 17 to 22-year-olds. That's like the normal range. Obviously, we got our super seniors, we got our younger, kids that come through, but that's kind of normally the range. So nonetheless, my recruiting process was good. I had a bunch of different offers, mainly mid majors, and I would say high mid majors, high mid majors and regular mid majors. So like high mid majors, like, are you familiar with the A10?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so like the A10, because I give them the high mid major kind of tag because when my freshman year of college, we had like 5 NCAA bids for women's basketball, which is like unheard of because smaller conference you usually only get one. So we had like a bunch of ranked teams, and it was like 5 teams from our conference went to they went to the NCAA tournament, which was amazing. So I say high mid major, and then I had some low major interests. So low major as in schools that have a bunch of money but don't have a winning program. So like those state programs that are huge and they have a bunch of money, like in the American Conference, that type of makeup, but they aren't really winning per se. And then some low major interests, so all D1 kind of lumped in together, and or low mid major. And I was like, I want to land somewhere in the middle. So took a bunch of visits, and before it went crazy, like my coach literally was like, you have this school, this school, this school coming to workouts this week. It was preseason. I literally made my commitment. I was like, I don't even want to deal with this anymore. I don't want people pulling up in my house. I don't want to deal with it. But the thing about it is,
can be very like, especially for a kid at that age, it's a lot to have 4 coaches standing there just kind of watching you, with
just staring at you, just evaluating everything. Evaluating everything, like look at her wingspan, or like just looking at you like you're an alien or something. Like, she has a good frame. Like, what the hell is that? So I ended up committing to VCU, Virginia Commonwealth University. Ironically, it was the first school that I took an unofficial visit to, and it was the one that stuck with me the most because the question I was asking myself was, would I go to this school if I wasn't playing a sport? And the answer is yes. And I actually just met up with one of my former teammates. We met up in Richmond, Virginia. And I was like, I still love this school. Like, I still have so much love for this school. It was just the program was, that was another story. I wish I would have taken my 5 visits. So any youngsters, any recruiters, athletes that are getting recruited right now, take all your visits, take all of them. I took one official visit and some other schools that wanted me to, come visit them. But my dad's like, don't waste that school's money if you know where you're going to go. And I'm like, it's in their budget to host me. And so I don't know where I would have been if I would have taken those other visits and had that experience to kind of work on, and work with my decision. And I don't know where I would have been if I would have known how significant the D2 and D3 levels were. I feel like my pride was like, my ego was like off the chain. I was like, I am a McDonald's All-American nominee. Like, what are you talking about?
Which is surprising considering you cut your recruiting off basically at the
Yeah.
knees with just committing this early.
I know. Like, again, I was the first D1 athlete in my family, and my parents had no clue, like zero. So my dad had no clue, even though he's a basketball fan. He had zero clue what was going on. And so I threw my recruiting to the wolves and totally should have waited, totally should have looked at different schools. Like, my grades were pretty good. They could have definitely swung me like an academic scholarship, and I could have lived my life and, just competed and just enjoyed it more, probably at a D2 or D3 school. But that's kind of up to college. I don't know if you want me to deep dive into college, but that's kind of how it went
We're
down.
gonna backtrack a little bit.
Okay.
Now, you said you had, we're gonna go back to, where you said you had your brother and everything that
Mm-hmm.
your brother went through. You did not want to go through.
No.
Now, what were some of those things that you specifically remember growing up? Because my brother and I, my closest brother and I are 8.5 years apart. So I remember the same thing for him.
Yeah.
Going to the same school, playing for the same coach. However,
Mm-hmm.
I can remember saying, all right, this is what he went through and picking his brain. So what are some of those things that it was kind of, you got to do it twice? So
Yeah.
in doing that, what were some of those things that you were looking out for within, the recruiting process, or just picking a school, or, answering those questions of, would I still go without basketball? What were some of those things that
Mm.
you were trying to answer as you were going through it?
Well, one, my brother actually didn't play college sports. Remember, I said I was the
You
first.
were the first,
So,
yes.
but he was, again, like I said, almost 6 years older than me. And so what I was seeing was that I just didn't, I mean, because I look at myself and I'm pretty independent. I guess that comes with, being an athlete. You're just like,
Mm-hmm.
all right, let's get it done. Let's call it a day.
Yeah.
And, let's do good work, basically. And that's how I approach life and my job. Like, all right, you don't have to like babysit me to do stuff. And I just knew I wanted that freedom. I wanted that freedom of choice. And with the first, it's always the hardest. Your parents are always like, they're on you about every little thing, because it's like you're the first one. So I just saw a lot of different things that my brother went through, mainly just, making sure he was on top of everything. Like, why did you change that class? Why are you majoring in this? Why are you changing your major again? Wait, you're transferring. What's going on? So I wanted that freedom of choice. And I wanted it on my own dime. So, you can say anything. Like, I transferred schools. Like, they when I hit 18, it was like, you don't have to support me financially
Yeah.
anymore, because like I'm on scholarship. So what else you got,
Yeah. That's pretty cool. Now, your brother didn't play collegiately, you said, but was
Mhm.
he an athlete growing up?
He ran track in high school.
Yeah. So when,
Mhm.
having another athlete in the house, what was that dynamic like for you growing up? And were there things that you were trying to emulate that he was doing? Or was it just like, okay, that's how he's doing it, I'm going to do it my way?
Definitely the latter.
Yeah.
Definitely the latter. That's how he wants to do it. I'm gonna do it this way. My brother and I think he was doing it more casually, like, oh, college is coming up. I do like to run. Like, to this day, my brother like does distance runs. Like, he does it for fun. Um, and on my end, it wasn't casual. It was really intense, and it was really focused. And I was a woman on a mission trying to get a scholarship. My brother was like, yeah, I mean, I'm gonna go to college, but I'm not gonna play sports, that type of thing.
Yeah.
So I could kind of take what he was doing with a grain of salt, but I was charting my own path for sure.
So now I ask you those questions mainly because
Mhm.
I would like to know, like, what was your motivation growing up? Where did it come from? Who were the people that you were looking up to? You said you like soccer. I mean, Carly Lloyd literally just retired the other day. So
I
like,
saw that.
who are these different people that you are looking up to
Like, sports figures or just life in
in
general?
general that are keeping you motivated as, a young athlete?
This is going to sound bizarre, but to be honest, I don't really like sports figures. I don't really have a lot of favorites.
Yeah.
There are people that I admire, but when people say, I was looking at Jordan tapes my entire life, Kobe was Candace Parker was it, I just enjoyed playing. I just enjoyed it. And I think the reason why I enjoyed it so much was because I gained some of my, lifelong friends. It's really true. If you join a club or a sport, you really can cultivate relationships, and learn so many different life lessons, that you don't normally get in the quote unquote real world. That's why I think as adults, we still want to play, right? You still want to join a club, you still want to join a gym, you still want to do something. Like I just ran a 5K the other week, and I'm just like, you just still want to be a part of something. And I think that was a big motivator. I saw people to my left and my right and was like, all right, they want to do it. And then the motivator behind going to college for free, because I saw the tremendous uptick in student loan debt and how it was crippling our generation of millennials. I was like, what is this? This is awful. Go to school, they said, go get the degree. Now you got to get a master's degree. And we're in tremendous debt because of it. And so for me, that was pretty much the main motivators. I mean, there were some people that I admired, but I loved playing the game. It was a big, at the time, high school, middle and below, it was a big de-stressor for me. I knew that while I was playing, I couldn't think about anything else. It was like laser eye focus. It was basically a state of flow. You can't focus on anything else, and it's just like that sweet spot where it's everything's just here.
Cool. Now the opposite end of being an athlete is being a student. Would you categorize yourself as a great student? Were you excelling on every single class, or were you that kind of student that was like, I got to get through school so I can get to practice?
I was somewhere in the middle for sure. I was definitely somewhere in the middle, because when I think back to high school, like my GPA, I could have done a lot better, and my GPA was above a 3.0, but it was probably like a 3.3, 3.4, somewhere hanging out 3.3, 3.4, somewhere around there. And I was just like, by the time I realized, hey, if I do okay on these tests, if I do my homework, like I'm good. I've just felt like I just felt like I coasted. Like it was never a concern. Classes were never a concern of like, will I make it to practice? But I just wish I would have challenged myself a little bit more, take some AP courses, see where I could have landed academically, because then I tried to coast in college and it was a different story. And my grades were really average, like they were like barely a 3.0. And I was like, I know I can do better. So I eventually got it together at my second school, like second university, and graduated with a 3.7 Q. So I don't know. Grades are really mundane and outdated, and that's a whole other conversation.
Certainly.
Because it's not an indicator on how well you'll do in society and how successful you'll be. Again, neither are standardized tests, which are I could deep dive into that, but
we'll have that conversation.
I just personally for myself just knew I could do better. I just personally for myself was like, I could do a little better with this. So
now back to the recruiting and college and picking a school. You said, and I love that question, right? That I wish I would have had that question. Would I have gone to this school if it wasn't for the sport? I literally wrote it down. I'm like, that is an amazing question. When you had that question, what followed that, right? What was the answer to that? And did you see that? And how did that change considering that you transferred?
What went into that question? At the time, it was all about feel. You just know, it's going to sound so general, but you just know if a place is for you. You walk around, you look in some classrooms, you see the kids on campus, you see the atmosphere. I'm coming from the suburbs, so I'm like, ooh, I want a city, but I don't want like a New York because that's overwhelming. I want something in the middle. I was trying to meet somewhere in the middle with a lot of different things. If you don't see the pattern,
Yeah.
trying to meet in the middle, trying to meet in the middle for a lot of different things. And I, again, even distance wise away from home, like, okay, like Richmond is, about 3 hours away from home. Not bad. I can still get back if I need to. So just trying to meet in the middle, trying to get a good feel. That was pretty much what went into that question. And it was like, if all else failed, because in my mind, as a women's basketball player, you're always thinking about the end in the beginning, which sounds bizarre because at the time that I was playing, I'm like, yo, getting out of school and in the WNBA, it was like, I could get paid $30,000 as a rookie. I'm like, what the heck is that? Like, I could
Yeah.
make better money and save my body. So it was never an idea for me to play professionally. So I'm already thinking like the what if, and I have to be able to balance that. But what went into the second school, that was more so, how do I want to strategically market myself after I'm done and after I've graduated?
What
And
was
the
the
truth
college?
is, American University, AU Eagles in DC.
Mm-hmm.
So the second school, that was more so, how do I want to strategically set myself up for my future? Because I'm like, okay, my GPA gets to reset from the first time when I was a little lazy. Well, and plus there's a difference in state schools and private schools. Classes are smaller. I was in a lecture hall with like 200 plus people doing a clicker. Those personal relationships with professors and having an intimate setting, I think that really like transformed my collegiate experience, because AU is it's a private liberal arts school.
Mm-hmm.
So the classes are a lot smaller and more intimate, and just like I just got the material better. But it was more so a strategic move. I was like, okay, even though I live outside of DC, I've never lived in DC. I have to sit out a year, but this is also a great school, like rankings wise and network wise and alumni. So how can I kind of swing this in my favor? So that's kind of where I was headed, because I was like, okay, D1 sports doesn't make sense as a whole, but where am I going to ride out in the rest of my career?
Yeah. So, VCU, what was campus life like, and what made you leave?
Campus life was fun. It was a lot of fun. It was too fun to the point that when I decided to leave, or when I kind of got kicked out, which we'll get into, um, I had like zero in my checkings and savings account, because I was like out every weekend, partying it up, buying food, buying clothes, just being reckless. And not, let me backtrack, not reckless in like, you know, what you may think of reckless, but just reckless with my money and spending, and saying, oh, I don't have sports, constructively to control my life. So I'm like, woo, sleep in late. Let me go, order a bunch of food or go online shopping or whatever, or go out and party it up all night because I don't have anything to do. So um it was a great time. It was great. I still have a lot of love for Richmond. Like I was saying, just visited like 2 weeks ago. And it's really artsy and just, it was cool. It still is cool. I highly recommend, go visit. Whoever's listening to this, go visit. It's cool. It's kind of a city that's this quiet as kept, because you don't really think about it, but it's right outside of DC, and a lot of really cool culture down there. And the people are nice. Um, Now, why did I leave? I left because a new coach came in. My coach that originally recruited me left. We found out on Twitter that she was leaving for $500,000 to go coach at Minnesota.
Great way
And
to
the
find
new,
out.
it was rough. The second coach that came in was trying to over recruit. She was bringing in transfers, bringing in 3 new freshmen. People were coming in for grad years. It was a lot. And so we were doing the math and was like, hold up, 15 scholarship athletes for women's basketball. So that means you have 3 people coming in, right? 3 people that you promised scholarships, including transfers. So 3 of us have to leave. And 3 of us ended up leaving, but not on our own accord. It was legit like I remember that meeting distinctly. I remember the words that she said, how she looked at me. It was really like her words to the T were like, you can do, mind you, I'm coming back from surgery. So I didn't sell that part, but I had knee surgery, a season ending injury my freshman year, which went into my sophomore year, and new coach. So I'm basically reliving my freshman year over again, having to get back in shape, having to do all this with a new coach. Um, and so she looks at me in this meeting at the end of the season, and she's like, no matter what you do, no matter how good or how much you improve over the summer, you'll never play for me. And I was like, damn, like, sheesh. You know, I'm 19, I'm just a baby. And I'm like, dang, this is some cold hearted stuff.
Yeah.
And so on paper, it looks like I left on my own accord because, again, this is what I be talking about in the book. Read everything. You know, I had no clue what I was signing. They made it seem like it was this release form to go get recruited by other schools. But in reality, they were just covering themselves, because if it would have been the opposite and the coach would have forced me to leave, then that's a violation, an NCAA rule violation. So because they can't force you to leave if it's based on like athletic performance or something. Like it has to be you're just like wilding out, or you know, academically you're not handling your business or whatever. So that's pretty much why I left. And it was a really dark time. It was sad. I was sad because I love my teammates to this day. They're like my sisters. And we were just kind of getting broken apart because this new coach came in and wanted to, like, you know, mess everything up.
So what went into choosing to go to American?
Like I said, I was making boss moves. We were playing chess, not checkers at that point. It was all strategy. My second time around, it was a completely different recruiting process. I'm blessed to say that the schools that were interested in me were all D1, but they were spread out everywhere. The first time I got recruited, it was like pretty much East Coast, like north to south, like top to Rhode Island down to Florida. The second time I had schools in Texas, in California, in Pennsylvania. I was like, what is this? This is South Carolina. I was like, what's happening right now?
Now, did you take your visits this time? The first time you
still did not take my visits. Still didn't. I got a call from AU. They wanted me to come in and work out. And I was like, cool. So I took my visit to AU, walked around, and I was like, cool, the school's in a city that I haven't really truly explored, especially not as an adult. I have to sit out now, right? Because I signed that sheet. I have to sit out. So I'm about an hour away from home. And I was like, I can swing this. And they're a pretty good academic school with a lot of prestige. So I was like, all right, let me think about my future. And so I rolled with it. And at the time, the coach seemed cool. So I rolled with it.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Now, kind of juxtapose those two situations where you are at VCU, you change over to American. What's the atmosphere like at the two different schools? And you know, how did you grow in that second chance, I guess I should say?
Well, VCU was tremendously diverse. It was artsy, funky, just like everybody's on their own vibe. And to this day, still like that. And why I have so much appreciation for it. You can go down there and really just find yourself. You can lose yourself too, but you can find yourself mainly. And what makes you unique. And and everybody's cool with each other. I don't know if it's down south culture, but like everybody's cool, like, and just nice and speaks and, you know, wants to hang out and all that good stuff. But also basketball culture was tremendously different down there. They pretty much worship the men's basketball team, and that kind of trickles down a little bit to the women's basketball team. So your face is plastered everywhere and people see you on campus. It's a very different vibe. The men's team goes to the NCAA tournament every year, so it's a whole different thing. I go to American, and it was culture shock. When I say PWI, I mean PWI, predominantly white institution.
Yeah.
Um, it was just a really different culture. I felt really alone. I felt like, even like specific to basketball, I just felt like I couldn't relate to my teammates all the time. It was a lot to kind of handle originally and kind of wrap my head around. And then, like anything, you have to assimilate in order to survive. So I started assimilating to the culture, and kind of just worked my angle with it. But it was tough. I forget the second part of your question. What was the second part of that?
Basically, what was the difference, and how did you grow within that new chance? I think you kind of answered it by saying you had to
Yeah,
assimilate, right? You had to kind
absolutely.
of figure out kind of your way. Now, the a question just came to me after you saying that
Mhm.
is, being a black athlete is a very big deal, especially playing
Mm.
basketball, football, track, those sports.
Yep. The
You've
the
already named,
mains.
right? The main sports. I played football, right? So
Right, right.
um, the only difference for me is that I was also a wrestler. So I was in a
Mhm.
very different culture than
I
you.
was gonna say that was probably
It was
interesting.
very, it still is now. I mean, there's a lot more that is happening progressively within the wrestling community now, but
Mhm.
me growing up a wrestler was very different, very much so different. But for you, being a black female in a predominantly white school and area, what's that
Yeah.
like, right? Like what's it like for you to grow as a teenager, 20 something at this time?
When I first got there, when I first got to AU, it just felt like I felt lonely. It just felt lonely. I went back and that year I went back and forth to my old school, and when I could, it was like the stars aligned. It would be
Mhm.
like, because I would only go back if the two people that I transferred with could go back as well. And so we would like pull up as a unit, be like, we're here to get lit. I mean, hang out with y'all, get lit with y'all. I can say it now, I'm grown, so whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't have like coaches on my back like, don't say that. But yeah, it's true. Athletes, do have fun.
Yes.
um but when I got to AU, it just felt lonely. It was, I felt like it was I felt like I was in a breakup, like a really harsh breakup. And, it's not just romantic breakups that hurt you, but like friendships, places, things. And I just felt like I was going through it alone, because the culture was completely different, and my coach couldn't relate at all. And, I got to AU, and for the first time in my life, I am a minority on a basketball team, which was nuts. I was like, I've never been on like, predominantly white team, and that's a different culture within itself. So having to navigate so many different just instances
A lot of
of
code switching there, huh?
code switching, of explaining different things, of not understand, like sometimes things just felt off, and
Mhm.
now we have a word for it, microaggressions, or why is your tone of voice, it's a little different here,
Yeah.
thinking back to some of the things that my coaches would say, I'm just like, that would be kind of cringy these days.
Yeah.
um but yeah, it was different and it was hard to navigate. And it's something that you grapple with, because on one hand, I felt like I was too black for the white folks and too light for the black folks. It was like I was, so again, it's like
Yeah.
my life is somewhere in the middle. I'm right here, I'm in the middle. And it's something that I've grappled with for my entire life, but now I have to do it at this predominantly white institution. But I think my saving grace was honestly that year that I transferred, because again, I went back to my old school a bunch of times, a bunch of times that I care to admit. Um, I met new people and new friends. It's like the minorities. It's like we find each other. It's like we find each other on campus somehow, some way. It's like we just gravitate. And
Yeah.
so when my team would go and travel, I would be like, bet I'm gonna go hang out with my friends that aren't athletes. We don't have to talk anything about sports. And yeah, I'm gonna kick it. So again, survival mode. I was in survival mode a lot of the time, and definitely deep in the books, because I wanted good grades. I was like, dang, well, my GPA gets to reset because I transferred, so I definitely want some good grades, and would kick it with my friends and made the most of it. It was tough.
Yeah. Now, as a young college student, whether it's VCU or American, did you declare a major when you first went in?
I did. Well, okay. First 2 years at VCU, they said that I didn't have to or not commit, but have to declare a major.
Mhm.
So I waited until like I'm about to be a junior, and I basically got played because I wanted to major in exercise science, and my advisor's like, well, you're going to lose like 15 credits if you do that, so you might as well do something like sociology or psychology or criminal justice,
So
which
they
they
basically wanted a basketball player to major in basketball for the first couple of years.
basically, yeah, they basically wanted to like pigeonhole you, and it's literally called academic clustering, which I talk about in the book as well.
Mhm.
When they try to cluster certain sports, or just collegiate sports in general, into majors that are more flexible and quote unquote easier
Yes.
to manage during the season. So I ended up declaring psychology. I hated it at the time. And then when I got to AU, I started enjoying it a little bit more towards my senior year because I get to take like specific upper level psych courses.
Mhm.
So I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting. And I'm like learning more about why people do the things they do, and learning about myself, and learning the importance of mental health. So I don't know. I hated it originally because I got pigeonholed into it. Still don't like that happened, but I have a deeper appreciation for it now. And I actually got my master's in a branch of psychology,
Mhm.
technically. So there's that.
Yeah. So let's stay on the academic side of things. And you just mentioned your master's.
Mhm.
Was that always a thought going into college originally, or did that kind of come to fruition later on?
Well, with a bachelor's degree in psychology, I better go get a master's degree because I won't get paid. And psychology is interesting, but it's kind of general. I'm learning about how people think, or, how to, run scientific tests and things like that.
Mhm.
So I need to get a master's degree in something in order to get paid. So, towards my senior year, I was like, okay, I'm gonna get a master's degree. And originally I wanted to be a GA somewhere, but I kind of get my coach just didn't help at all. I wanted to be a GA to go to school for free and be able to still say hey around basketball and all that good stuff, but I got no help and assistance. Um, and so I basically took an interim year off and I worked and eventually applied to grad school, and kind of swung it, and it
And
was
where'd you go
cool.
to grad school?
I went to University of Pennsylvania, so go Quakers. Homecoming's in like a week or two at this point, so I'm hyped. I'm gonna go to homecoming.
And the colors don't
um
change either from there to AU. The colors are pretty similar.
I know, it's so bizarre. It's like, dang, like I can't get away from can't get away from the red, white, and blue. It's a darker blue and a darker red. Like,
Yes,
of course I can like tell that because
you've been there.
um been there. But still, it was really ironic. I have That's ironically my favorite school that I've ever gone to, because I reclaimed everything that I lost,
Yeah,
and just joining a bunch of clubs, being able to work, being able to do research, being able to enjoy school, and select the classes that I wanted to take. Um, and it was dope. I have so much love and appreciation for that place. It's
yeah,
my favorite. I literally got a pen flag to my left. It's my favorite school.
that's pretty cool. Now,
Mhm.
let's get into the book.
Let's get into the book.
Let's get into the book. You've mentioned it a couple of times. I'm anxious to read it. Haven't gotten it yet. Looking forward to it. Um, but what was the motivation for the book, and what, I guess, as a writer myself, you
Mhm.
have those days where you're like, I need to start writing, right? When was that light bulb moment that it went off and you're like, I need to start writing this?
Well, the motivation for the book was all it like everything's always been tied to my experience as an athlete. my
Mhm.
experience as a researcher. So I actually did this research in grad school that's published. But my thing is, how do I deliver it to people? How do I deliver it in a package that is practical and that people want to engage with? Because who wants to read academic language? I don't, and I'm in academia. I'm like an advisor right now. So I don't even want to always read it, right? It's very mundane, it's very dense, and sometimes it's almost intimidating, especially for people that aren't in that space,
Mhm.
to be able to read all this very lofty language. And so when I graduated, I created Black and Ballin, which is, still going and something that I use to talk sports, especially from a Black perspective, especially just Black student athletes that don't have a lot of resources and guidance. But I don't know, I felt like something was missing. I felt like I still had more stuff to say. Um, and what ended up happening was New Year hit of 2021. And people have asked me before if I ever wanted to write a book. Um, and they're like, yo, your story's so interesting. You should write a book. You should write a book. I'm like, I don't want to talk about myself. I really don't. Oh my gosh, my career was extremely up and down, multiple coaches, multiple season ending injuries. I don't feel like talking about that. I mean, I'm in a good space. Like that's what therapy is for. I will, I've talked about it plenty. And I want to provide some type of guide, so I started at the top of the new year, pretty much started compiling a list of like people that have wrote similar books, athlete transition, athlete development, you know, life after sports, because that's like a really hot topic right now, along with mental health. And of course, NIL. But I was like, yo, where is the guide? Where is the guide for athletes? Like, where do they get an overview of this experience? Nothing that has to be super long, but like, where is it? I don't see it. It's either something that's tied specifically to an author's, own journey as an athlete, which is great, tell your story, or it's something tied to a specific topic like life after sports or finance or nutrition. I literally have a huge major list and I was like deep dive into this. And so one day in early 2021, I just like wrote the book. I just wrote it, like went crazy, went like typing crazy, like eyes bugged out, just, hunched over the computer, just going nuts. Um, and I wrote it and it just sat on my computer for like 4 or 5 months, literally just sat there. And I was like, okay, so I, wrote this. And, as a kid, you read play-in books like this, A for this, because my book's called the ABCs for College Athletes.
Mhm.
So I was like, okay, there's plenty of books that are out there like this. Um, this is practical enough. This is, simple in terms of idea, but practical in terms of I'm still offering, really constructive content and stuff that's, it's dense enough that you'll feel like you are getting a lot out of the experience and understanding it's a lot that goes into being a college athlete. So that's pretty much how it went down. When I run the story back in my head, it's kind of wild because the book just sat on my computer and I just kind of let it be there. I was like, all right, well, it was like I needed to get my ideas out on paper and just went like crazy and went, typing. But that's how it pretty much came about. Like that's how it came to be.
Yeah. And then when was it that you said, okay, I need to do something with this? It can't sit on my computer for 4 months anymore.
Yeah, well, so as we've all been doing in this pandemic, connecting with a bunch of different people, this this time has been so strange, trying to replicate genuine connections. Because I mean, this is gonna sound weird, but I'm one of those people that actually likes going to networking events because one, you get to just meet people, but there's also a possibility something great could happen,
Mhm.
and at the same time even if you do completely just, screw up the conversation or you get real nervous or whatever, there's a possibility you will never see them again. So why not present your best self and see how it goes? So I actually like networking events and, you can put a face to a name and meet some really cool and powerful people.
Mhm.
Can't do that in a pandemic. So LinkedIn has been the place. It is the hot spot. It is Club LinkedIn. Um, and I started connecting with more people, and someone reached out to me who is also in the field and was like, oh, have you ever considered writing a book? And I was like, funny you say that. I've already read it. I mean, I've already written it. And he was like, have you ever considered self-publishing and, getting assistance for self-publishing? And there are like, assisted self-publishing companies that help you throughout the entire process. And so that's pretty much how it went down. Like, by like May, we were working out details. And so for the last, 6 months, I have been finalizing those details. And I thought I was done writing the book, but it got in the hands of some editors, and they pretty much, I don't want to say ripped it apart, but, just asked more thought provoking questions that made me write more into the book. So yeah, that's how it came to be.
Yeah. Now, when you got those revisions back,
Mm-hmm.
because like you said, you wrote it, you were eyes bugged out of your head. I get those moments where you're just in your zone, right? It's
You're
kind
just
of like
you're
being an
in your
athlete.
bag, yeah.
You're just in your bag on a Friday night, and
Mm-hmm.
that's just how it works. It's the same way with writing. I know exactly how it is. Now, it sat for 4 months, and then you get revisions back. How did you get back into that creative process? Because for you, essentially, you did what you wanted to do, and it was done, and you were like, all right, I'm good. And now you get the criticism and everything that you have to fix and change, and how do you get back into that writing process to make these revisions and changes?
It wasn't that bad because, like I said, I run Black and Ballin and I make content for that. So the conversations around sport, around race, around intersections, around, NIL, all that was going on, I was constantly talking about it. So it wasn't that hard to like get back in the saddle and, write. And writing for me has always been something that's kind of just naturally come to me. That's gonna it's just naturally been like something that I can do. I'm not a fan of it. Like I don't say like, oh, I'm a writer. Like it's what I do. No, not at all. It's just something that has naturally come to me. And people be like, yeah, I'm just naturally gifted, but I don't really like this. That's kind of like how
Yeah.
I approach writing. It's like I can do it when I have to, but like otherwise, but that's how I kind of went down.
Yeah. Now,
Mm-hmm.
looking back on the entire process,
Mm-hmm.
when you're writing this book, and you're really doing your deep dives and everything else, what's something that you wrote or came across that you were like, somebody is going, this is the thing. This is one of the, maybe this is one of the 13 things that you learned from my book, right? What are
Mm-hmm.
some of those things that you yourself are coming across during your research and your writing process that you're like, this is something that they truly need to know?
Mm. I think one of the biggest is that, and I address it literally within the first couple of chapters. I want people to feel affirmed because it's not just going to be future athletes that are reading this book. It's going to be former athletes. It's going to be athletes that are currently, knee deep into it. I want them to feel affirmed. Like you weren't alone in this. Like, yes, your coach is absolutely nuts.
Yeah, yeah,
But I mean, I don't frame it as that. I wanted to take a really, really objective viewpoint and lens into this book. I wanted to give as many options and as many details as I could about the experience, but ultimately it's left up to the reader. Like I give you a blueprint, you can choose to use it if you want. You can choose to, go off and do your own thing. Again, I'm one person. I cannot encompass everyone's experience. What I'm coming from is my experience as a student athlete, my experience with coaches. I have friends that are, coaches in college athletics. My colleagues and former teammates and all, because you're an athlete, you are friends with plenty of other athletes.
yeah,
So you hear all their stories. So I'm combining all of that. And, also just background in terms of academia. So I'm trying to like be a melting pot. Well, not necessarily be a melting pot. Oh, there goes my headphone. But try to encompass a lot of different ideas. And I'm like, I'm one person. So I'm going to hit this as a highlight, but it's up to you to live your life.
yeah,
So, the first back to your initial point, some highlights that really stick out to me. One, I hope that readers feel affirmed because I talk about the business of sports and how that business is, pretty much your life, right? It's a multi-billion-dollar business in college athletics.
And with the NIL, it's
And
an even bigger business now.
it's an even bigger business now, and there's no avoiding it. And so college athletic departments have to work with their athletes, not against them, because it won't be in your favor. I talk about intersections because I think as an athlete, you grapple with a lot of either or thinking. And I've had this conversation with one of my friends, and it's like, you don't have to be either or all the time. It doesn't have to be, I can either be this or I can either be that. Sometimes you can be both and I think that's really powerful. And so I reiterate that within my book as well.
Mhm.
I talk about health, which is also one of my favorite chapters, because as an athlete, your body goes through so much. I didn't have a major injury until I got to college. It was like my body completely failed me. I was like, what the heck is this? It just failed. And I was like, I feel like I'm so old. Like, why are my bones so brittle? What's going on? Why am I headed to surgery right now? Um, so I talk about the importance of maintenance and maintaining your body and understanding that the little things that you do along the way will set you up for your future. Because who's going to be left with the medical bills after you're all said and done? It's going to be you. So you need to really take a moment to take care of yourself. And I'm not just talking about from a physical standpoint, but from a mental one, like, why do we go and seek help immediately if we have sprained an ankle or tweaked a knee, but we don't go, I can't even talk right now. Oh my gosh. Bunch of tongue twisters today. Whoever's listening to this, I'm like, my bad. But you don't go get help immediately when it comes to mental health.
Yeah.
A lot of times you just like let it build up, build up, build up. And it's like, oh my gosh, I need to talk to someone. I want to encourage athletes to be proactive. And so be proactive in all aspects of your health. Man, I could talk about the book all day. Like, there's just so many different pockets, but ultimately the book is it's not meant to be an encyclopedia. I could literally write a book per chapter. Like, it could be that dense. I didn't want that to be like, I want athletes to be able to pick this book up, say over the course of a few days, I'm going to finish this thing and I'm going to have pages and pages worth of notes to be able to work off of. I'm going to have questions that I can be able to ask my coaches and ask my family, right? Because I write from a lens of me as a Black woman, right? I'm at the intersection. I write from a lens of me being the first in my family to go through a process like this. So it's like, if you have no resources at all and you're navigating this space by yourself, do you have $20 to be able to, set yourself up for your future? That's pretty much how I approached it. Like, if all else failed, and, because college athletics is pretty siloed, you feel like, where are the resources? How do I find them? What do I do? It's set up that way as a control thing, but that's another thing. But I was just like, how can I help athletes that are really struggling with this? And how can I get them thinking broader about their experience and what they want to get from it? Like, what they want to accomplish, whether that's NIL, whether that's, you're in major, whether that's a better relationship with your coaches, all of that good stuff I kind of propose in the book. So
Yeah. Now, we don't want to give too much of it away, but I know,
yeah,
you
I
said
gotta give a little bit to
just a
get
little, just a
people
little. Now,
to
now,
get
one of the
people's mouth
things,
watering.
right, one of the things that we talked about in one of the meetings that we had before, hopping on this is
Mm-hmm.
that you challenge the readers. So as you say, that it's not an encyclopedia, it's not just all
Mm-mm.
information. Talk about some of those challenges that you have, blatantly and sometimes hidden within the book.
I challenge the reader to think broader. The entire book, the entire book. I challenge the reader to think broader about the experience because it goes by so fast. You look up, you may be a super senior and have a year or two, or have, a global pandemic happen and, your eligibility gets, you get tack on some years, right? This is an unprecedented time, but in normal times, you maybe have 4 to 5, maybe less, maybe more. I challenge the reader to think broader about their experience, because this time goes by so fast.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, you have so many resources at your fingertips and you don't even know it. You are literally fueling a industry and fueling your athletics department, right? Giving people, you're putting money in people's pockets, right?
Mm-hmm.
You need to utilize that to your advantage. And when you're 17 to 22, you don't think about it like that. You're just trying to get playing time. You're trying to appease. You're trying to follow all the rules for the most part. You know, we've pretty much seen the horror stories of when
Yeah.
folks don't follow the rules. But I want readers to get all the resources that they deserve. And I want them to be in as many intersections as they want to be, because there's power in that, right? We're seeing so many conversations around athletes and saying like, oh yeah, I'm also a painter, or I also have a passion for interior design, or you know, I love wellness and I love investing. And it's like younger athletes are seeing like, oh, it's okay for me to be both and still dominate in my sport. I want them to see value in that, because that is something that validates and something that really contributes to a better organizational culture. So like my master's degree is in organizational behavior. That's what I do on a day to day. I analyze organizations and look at their downfalls and their pitfalls. So I approach the book pretty much from that lens as well. Like, how can you, and even from an admin standpoint, how can you treat your athletes better, or offer more resources, or be there for them in a psychologically safe environment for them to really thrive, you know? Because when it's over, it's over. And a lot of athletes will fall off. And that's the issue that I'm kind of grappling with throughout the book. Like, I don't want you to fall off. I want you to continue to soar. I want you to take off where you left and keep it pushing. Like, we've all seen the stories, former athlete now working at, you know, Trader Joe's or whatever. But it's like, wait, what happened? You just got a free degree. Well, I didn't really choose my major. I didn't really do any clubs. I didn't really do anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to challenge the reader to seek more, to be more.
Yeah. Now you just mentioned it towards the tail end of what you were talking about
Mm-hmm.
is, you know, when it's over, it's over. As an athlete, right? And one of the things I, like I said, before we started talking, one of the things I grappled with was knowing when my athletic career was done. Um,
Mm.
and you know, the first athlete story we did was with Rowan, who, you know, he had to medically, you know, retire, so he had to
Yeah.
make a decision from a younger age. Um, how did you go through that process of knowing once it's done, and um, how did you handle that mentally?
I didn't really know it was done. I knew mentally I was done. Physically, I probably could have kept going. So the way that my career went was my senior year, I had another season ending injury and hurt my back. But I don't think my coach really wanted me to come back. She's all hit me with, oh, there's going to be so many people. There's going to be this, going to be that, a lot of politics. By the time I got to my junior year, senior year, I was like, this doesn't make sense anymore. The way that this business is run, the way that people are operating, all the different politics at play, from donors to parents to administration to just overall, like some stuff just wasn't making sense. And so when I got into that meeting, I was just like, all right, well, I ended up blaming it on my injury. I remember that. I was like, yeah, you know, I'm just, you know, having a bunch of injuries. I'm like 21, like my body can heal.
Still
I
resilient, yeah.
yeah, I'm like, it's fine. I pretty much, when I got to grad school, I played ball like 3 times a week with like grown men. I was like the only woman out there, but nonetheless, I blamed it on my injury. But mentally, the truth was I was done. I was done. It didn't make sense anymore. It didn't make sense because I just felt like I had no autonomy. And that's another thing that I talk about throughout the book. You know, you're an adult legally, but sometimes, a lot of times in college athletics, you feel like you have no autonomy. You feel like you have no control over your life and what's going on. And that is something that is really messed up, because you are an adult legally. You should be able to make some choices for yourself, a lot of choices, all the choices for yourself. Um, so I made a choice and I actually opted out. I could have had probably up to 2 years extra because I had a transfer year. I had another year where I was injured. So I opted out of 2 years and I was like, this doesn't make sense anymore. So there's that.
Yeah. Well, I
Mhm.
mean, that's hard, right? Like at least you were able to kind of read the tea leaves of your of the community that was around you, right? Because some people can't, and it's
Mhm.
really, really hard for them to do that. So when it comes to, obviously, your book is not an encyclopedia, but it's a lot of advice, a lot of information. What piece of advice, as we kind of cap this off, would you like to leave the generation that's in high school right now, or that is literally in college right now doing it? What piece of advice would you like to leave them with?
That's a good question. Mm, it doesn't last forever. It does not last forever. That sounds easy, but it doesn't last. So, no matter where you are in your career, it doesn't last forever. I think I'm about to cough, so hold on. I was like, I'm gonna say more, but like, that's what I get for talking too much about myself.
It's all right. I
But
asked for it.
but it doesn't last forever. So you're gonna have some up days, some down days, but just know that it doesn't last. So, just stay at that even kill, like that middle ground, and you should be fine. I used to think just my whole day would be wrapped around if I did well in practice or did well in a game. And there's so much more going on in life than a game. Like ultimately you are playing a game. Like it's a game that we made up for physical activity. And sometimes it doesn't have to hold so much weight, and it's okay to be at the intersection. Those are pretty much the two things that I would definitely leave them with. It doesn't last forever, no matter what it is, and it's okay to be at the intersection. Like give yourself permission to have other interests besides sports. So yeah.
That is perfect. And I truly appreciate, I said it before, but I truly appreciate you taking some time out to sit, talk about your background, the book,
Mhm,
and everything else in between.
mhm.
I loved this. This was great. This was an awesome, I don't even consider this an interview. This was a great conversation. So I think it's great. Like I said, I'm looking forward to reading the book. If you're watching this and listening to this right now, get the book.
Get the book.
Just based off of our conversations and what you've kind of provided for me, behind the scenes,
Mhm.
I cannot wait, and I think this is a perfect tool for athletes, people in general. Even if you're not an athlete, you just need to know these things about just navigating. So like I said, I really
Absolutely.
appreciate it. Thank you very much. You got anything else for us before we let you go?
Well, thank you. I think what you're doing, like I said, what you are doing is fantastic. It always hits different when you get to talk to fellow athletes and they know about the experience that you've gone through. So I think what you all are doing is fantastic. Thank you for having me on. I do want to say that none of my stories that I mentioned today will be in the book. That's something that people don't know. It's again, I want it to be as objective as possible. I do provide some examples, real world examples, but none of my personal stories are in the book. So I really leave it up to the reader to make those decisions on their own and how they want to pursue their own careers. And find me on social media. The best bet is probably LinkedIn, Briana DuBose. I'm not gonna lie, Instagram gets it's kind of funny because it'll be like some random person messaging you, but like they're really like, hi, my name is whatever, but their username is something really sketchy, and I'm like, what? Just so if you want to message me and chat, find me on LinkedIn. That's your best bet. And my website is brianadubose.com. My author site is authorbrianadubose.com. So that's pretty much where you can find book stuff. And yeah, thanks again for having me. This is great.